The board will now come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus, Alderman Bosley, Alderman Moore, Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderwoman Ingracia, Alderman Kotar, Alderman Conway, Alderman Gunther, Alderman Vollmer, Alderwoman Martin, Alderman Onowitz, Alderwoman Murphy, Alderwoman Howard, Alderwoman Green, Alderman Oldenburg, Alderman Rhodey, Alderman Kennedy, Alderwoman Davis, Alderwoman Spencer, Alderman Muhammad, Alderman Boyd, Alderman Vaccaro, Alderman Ogilvie, Alderman Cone, Alderman Williamson, Alderwoman Boyd, Alderwoman Navarro, President Reed,
Here.
Alderman Bosley, Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderwoman Ingracia, Alderman Conway, Alderman Gunther, Alderwoman Howard, Alderwoman Spencer, Alderman Cone, Alderwoman Boyd, 20 present.
Quorum being present, we will be led today in prayer by Pastor John Watson of Maple Temple.
Maybe I'll stand for prayer. This morning, we'd like to take a moment of silence for one of our faithful public servants, firefighter Bob Abel. Gave 24 years of his life to the City of St. Louis Fire Department, passed away on last week. He was the son of Judy and Walter Abel that were public servants of the City of St. Louis for many years, public employees. So we'll have a moment of silence. We read from the Holy Scriptures. For God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Gracious God, Heavenly Father, we first thank you for this privilege of prayer on today. In this chamber, we stand in your presence as a community in need of your Holy Spirit in our hearts and minds. As we concentrate on healing our community, we ask that you release from us fear of change and fear of one another. Empower us to show concern, love, and understanding to every member of the community. Give those who govern us the insight to create policies and laws that are sound and just, so that all might experience liberty, justice, and peace. Into your arms we commit ourselves, our families, our community, our great city. Amen.
Introduction, round of guests. Any introduction, round of guests. Alderman from the 4th.
Morning, members of the board. I have as my special guest today a very special group of young men, the Reverend Reuben Lockridge, would you please stand, from West Virginia, and the Reverend John Payton, also of Virginia.
All right, welcome.
And all those of you whose name won't be called.
Alderman from the 23rd.
Mr. President and members of the board, I'd like to have as my special guest Fred Searcy from the Plumbers and Pipe Fitters, and Nathan Lett from the firefighters.
Alderman from the 7th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to have as my special guests Keith Taylor, Jeff Hans, and Ray Schwagman from the Carpenters District Council. I'd also like to have as my special guests Anthony Lancia from the Association of General Contractors, and last but certainly not least, as my special guests, the newlyweds Megan McBride and Clinton McBride.
Yeah, Clint. Alderman from the 26th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to have as my honored guest today, Ms. Connie Johnson, Assistant Treasurer, and also Mrs. Robertson from Ameren UE, and Justin Eidelberg from the 26th Ward. Thank you.
Alderman from the 21st.
Hey, thank you, Mr. President. I would like to have my special guest, the former committee woman of the 21st Ward and our state senator, Jamila Nasheed.
Alderman from the 16th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, I would like to have as my special guest today Dave Sweeney with Lewis Rice, Charlie Hinderleiter with the St. Louis Realtors, and Mr. Lou Hamilton. Thank you.
Alderman from the 22nd.
Yes, good morning, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to have several people as my honored guests this morning. Chris Pickle and Leroy Grant with AT&T, Sheila Jones with Ameren, Missouri, and Javante Nelson with Senator Sheet's office.
Alderman from the 24th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to welcome the Chief Strategist for the Ogilvy clan, my lovely wife of almost 40 years now, Ruth Ogilvy. Thank you.
Any further introductions? Any further introductions? Any further introductions? Alderman from the 10th, like to wrap us up.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. As we're gathered here on September 29th, this is Ask a Stupid Question Day. No, we should just stop there, but in 1963, My Favorite Martian premiered on television. But most importantly, this is National Confucius Day. And as Confucius said, a bird in hand makes it hard to blow nose. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Alderman. You know, last week we adopted a measure on the floor of the board intended to comfort a grieving mother and also intended to bring our city back together, this much divided city. This board, members all across this board have taken just a beating in their neighborhoods, their communities, and in the press since that day. And as I said, when this stuff started, it is going to be some very difficult times and difficult days ahead, and that's what I meant. It's going to take a lot to bring our city back together. It's going to take people, us working to bring people out of their comfort zone and begin to talk about these things that are happening across our United States in a real substantive way. So I appreciate the response of the board last week when all of you chose to take the high road, all of you chose to come together, all of you chose to do the right thing. And I appreciate it, and I know that you've paid a cost across this last week for it. And understand, I, for one, as a father of four, appreciates that. With that, Alderman from the 18th, approval of the minutes. Please state your point of order, Alderman from
Mr. President, members of the board, in my defense, I was actually absent from the meeting September 22nd.
Yeah.
So I had not a chance to voice my opinion either way. So I just want to let the record know that it was embanked while I was absent. Thank you.
I think the record shows. Alderman, for approval of the minutes?
Mr. President, we have no minutes to approve.
Okay. Report of city officials.
Report of city officials can be found in sections A, B, and C of the agenda and have been placed in all aldermen's mailboxes.
We dispense with line items 7 and 8. Would anyone like to take any bills off of any of our informal calendars? Would anyone like to take any bills off of any of our informal calendars? Alderman from the 1st.
Not informal, but I do want to take Resolution 145 off of the consent when it's appropriate.
Okay, okay. Madam Clerk, please make note of that. Resolution 145 from the consent calendar to the regular resolutions calendar.
So noted.
We dispense with line items 9 and 10. First reading of board bills.
Board Bill 130, sponsored by Alderwoman Spencer, Alderman Ogilvy, Cone, and Gunther, an ordinance pertaining to levying of certain fees as described herein upon tickets sold for events at the city-owned facilities, including the Sky Trade Center, Peabody Opera House, and any new city-owned professional soccer stadium and other city-owned buildings used for sports and entertainment purposes to fund certain construction, reconstruction, and improvements as described herein, and authorizing and directing the establishment of the sports and entertainment facilities support fund by the comptroller or other appropriate city officer, providing public funding for such activities, and repealing ordinance 70473. Board Bill 131, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, pursuant to ordinance 68937, an ordinance authorizing the honorary street name Elder Benny Lee Thompson Street, which shall begin at the intersection of Sheridan and Webster and run east on Sheridan to North Garrison. Board Bill 132, sponsored by Alderwoman Howard, an ordinance establishing an Office of Community Mediation and for the appointment of a director for its oversight and management, who shall establish a protocol for delivering voluntary mediation services for the citizens, and a schedule of fees which may be charged, therefore, to be used upon a participant's ability to pay, and who shall monitor the outcomes and lasting results of mediations, and containing an emergency clause and a severability clause. Board Bill 133, sponsored by Alderwoman Martin, and ordinance recommended by the Board of Public Service to conditionally vacate above surface, surface, and subsurface travel in Prim Street from Riley in city blocks 3126 and 3150. That's the extent of our first readings.
Reference to committee.
To the Streets Committee, Board Bill 131 and 133, to the Ways and Means Committee, Board Bill 130, and to the Public Employees Committee, Board Bill 132. That's the extent of reference to committees.
Second reading.
The following board bills were reported out of the Streets Committee. Board Bill 113 as amended, sponsored by Alderman Arnowitz, President Reed, Alderwoman Howard and Murphy, pursuant to ordinance 68937, an ordinance authorizing the honorary street name S. Sergeant Ronald Boskisitz, U.S. Army, Green Beret Street, will begin at the intersection of Livingston Drive and Fillmore Street and run northwest on Fillmore Street to Coronado Avenue. The following board bills were reported out of Transportation and Commerce Committee. Board Bill 95, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance recommended and approved by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the Director of Airports and the Comptroller, owner and operator of St. Louis Lambert International Airport, to enter into and execute the Hunter Engineering Lease Agreement, AL004, between the city and Hunter Engineering, and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 102, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance recommended and approved by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the Director of Airports and the Comptroller and the owner and operator of St. Louis Lambert International Airport to enter into and execute on behalf of the city the Trans-States Holding Incorporated Airport Office Building Lease Agreement between the city and Trans-State Holding, containing a severability clause and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 107, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance recommended and approved by the Airport Commission, the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, that provides for financial incentives for air services at St. Louis Lambert International Airport, determines and finds that it is in the best interest of the city, the airport, and traveling public to encourage service at the airport by new passenger and cargo airlines, and to stimulate service by airlines currently using the airport by the adoption of programs providing for financial incentives for new airlines or new air service at the airport, adopts an air service incentive program for fiscal years 2018 through 2020, containing a severability clause and an emergency clause. Board Bill 108, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance recommended and approved by the Airport Commission, the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, making certain findings with respect to the transfer of $1,600,000 of excess monies that the city, the owner and operator of St. Louis Lambert International Airport, intends to transfer from the Airport Development Fund into the Airport Contingency Fund between the city as grantor and UM as trustee, providing transfer in the total amount of $1,600,000 from the Airport Development Fund into the Airport Contingency Fund, containing a severability clause and an emergency clause. Board Bill 109, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance recommended and approved by the Airport Commission, the Board of Public Service, and the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, establishing and authorizing a multi-year public work and improvement program at St. Louis Lambert International Airport, providing for and consisting of capital improvement projects, implementation, administration, management, or monitoring of the airport projects at a total estimated cost of $110 million, authorizing an initial appropriation in an total amount of $79,010,684, as follows: $5,887,470 from the Airport's Development Fund, $15,122,946 from the Passenger Facility Charge Fund, $31,402,134 from the 2017 Construction Subaccount, $26,598,134 from the Series 2017 Deconstruction Subaccount, containing a severability and an emergency clause. Board Bill 110, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance recommended and approved by the Airport Commission, the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the mayor and the comptroller, the owner and operator of St. Louis Lambert International Airport, to accept a supplemental agreement to the Airport Aid Agreement offered by the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission for the marketing and promotion of air services at the airport for a maximum obligation of $592,000 for the reimbursement of direct costs associated with the projects funded under the grant agreement, which extends the time period of the supplemental agreement for 3 months from June 30th, 2016 up to and including September the 30th, 2016, and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 111, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance recommended and approved by the Airport Commission and the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the mayor and the comptroller, owner and operator of St. Louis Lambert International Airport, to accept and execute on behalf of the city certain airport aid agreement offered by the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission for the marketing and promotion of air service at the airport for a maximum obligation of $375,000 for the reimbursement of direct costs associated with the projects funded under the grant agreement and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 112, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the Director of Airports and the Comptroller to enter into and execute the First Amendment to the Wi-Fi and Distributed Antenna System Operating Agreement, AL-263, to the St. Louis Lambert International Airport Wi-Fi and Distributed Antenna System Operating Agreement between the city and Concourse Communications Group, LLC, organized and existing under the laws of the state of Delaware and authorized by the city ordinance 69919, containing a severability clause and containing an emergency clause. That's the extent of our second readings.
We dispense with line item 14, perfection consent.
Board Bill 118, sponsored by Alderman Rhodey, and ordinance recommended by the Board of Public Service to conditionally vacate travel on an irregular shaped portion of Shoto adjacent to 4001 through 07 Shoto and City Block 3957, beginning at Sarah. Board Bill 114, sponsored by President Reed and Alderman Vaccaro, and ordinance adopted pursuant to Section 105.483 of the revised statute of Missouri, reaffirming the provisions of ordinances 62391, 66691, 67617, 68409, and 68934, establishing a policy for the disclosure of potential conflicts of interest and substantial interest of for certain municipal officials and containing an emergency clause. That's the extent of perfection consent.
Alderman from the 18th, you recognize on the motion for the perfection consent calendar.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move for adoption of the perfection consent calendar.
Moved by the Alderman from the 18th, seconded by the Alderman from the 14th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We will dispense with line items 16, 17, 18, 19. Alderman from the 19th, you recognize on the motion for the courtesy resolution calendar. I've already moved it. Yeah. Madam Clerk, you made note of that move of resolution 145, correct, to the regular resolutions calendar.
Yes, so noted.
Alderman from the 19th, you recognize on the motion for the courtesy resolution calendar.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move to adopt the courtesy resolution calendar.
Moved by the Alderman from the 19th, entertain the second, seconded by the Alderman from the 27th. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
First reading of resolutions.
Resolution 145, sponsored by Alderman Vaccaro. The Board of Aldermen express the appreciation deserved by the men and women of the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department. We pause to recognize their dedication to preserving the safety and well-being of the citizens of the city.
Alderman from the 23rd, you recognize on the first reading of Resolution 145.
Yes, Mr. President, I wish I would have been able to read this from the dais, but that's fine. I'm here representing, as a dad, the parents, the husbands, the wives, the children who watch this on TV and worry about our children. There's two sides to every story. This city needs to come together on all sides. And when I'm asked not to read mine, or as a rule, not able to read mine from the dais, I think it goes a long way to keeping us divided when we really need to come together and talk. My resolution is pretty simple. As a dad, I worry about my son. I call him several times. As a father of someone who has received the Medal of Valor for saving someone's life, I worry every time I see a fire in the area that my kids are in. There are parents, grandparents, children that worry about their moms and dads. I have here a picture of a police officer that was shot in the line of duty and died from his injuries. His wife is here. I appreciate you letting me have my say. Please assign this to legislation, which is my committee.
All right. It's been, please state your objection.
Because I would like to have it sent to public safety along with the other public safety issues, because I agree with the alderman from the 23rd that it is something that is two sides. I already have two resolutions that I sent there looking into what happened, so he's right. Instead of having a fact of this is what happened, this goes along with the other resolutions, and I'd ask that it be sent to public safety, not to legislation.
All right, but his original motion is the one that we have to, if it fails, then you'll have an opportunity to make a motion for that. It's been moved by the Alderman from the 23rd. I entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 8th, that we send Resolution 145 to legislation. Any discussion on that? Alderman from the 23rd?
Rather than further divide this board, I will withdraw my motion and let it go to public safety, because I don't feel that each alderman should be put on the spot like we were last week.
Okay.
So I'll withdraw my motion, and I will let it, because I will have my say in public safety.
Hey, Alderman, may I make a recommendation to you? If you want it to go to public safety, make the motion right now that it go to public safety. I'm with that. I'm getting that. But Alderman from the 23rd.
And I'll make the second's been withdrawn, and I'll make that motion.
Okay.
That we send it to public safety, which I'm fine. I'll get my say there.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 23rd. Entertain the second on the motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 8th. that we send Resolution 145 to Public Safety. Alderman from the 8th, did you want to read the resolution or have the resolution read prior to us send it? All right. Would you like to request the clerk to read the resolution?
I would request that the clerk read the resolution, please.
Okay. Please.
Resolution 145. Whereas the Board of Aldermen acknowledge and commend the men and women of St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department for their steadfast dedication to safeguarding the well-being of the citizens of the city of St. Louis. And whereas the men and women of the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department were called to respond to the unrest which would unfold on Friday, September the 15th, 2017. Whereas the men and women of the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department aligned under straining circumstances to preserve the citizens and businesses of the city of St. Louis from harm and allow citizens to exercise their right to peacefully assemble and give expression to their feelings of frustration and dissent. And whereas in doing so, the men and women of the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department were called to spend long hours away from their families and loved ones and forego being present at the life events that bond us to family and friends and the pursuits which give needed balance and enrich our lives. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Aldermen of the City of St. Louis that to express the appreciation deserved by the men and women of the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department, we pause to recognize their dedication to preserving the safety and well-being of the citizens of the City of St. Louis. We further direct the clerk of this board to spread a copy of this resolution across the minutes of these proceedings and to prepare a memorial copy to the end that it may be presented to the men and women of the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department at a time and place deemed appropriate by the sponsor. Introduced on the 29th day of September 2017 by Honorable Joseph Vaccaro, Alderman 23rd Ward.
It's been moved and seconded that we send Resolution 145 to Public Safety. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Madam Clerk, please sign Resolution 145 to Public Safety.
So noted. That's the extent of our first reading of resolution.
Alderman from the 26th.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to make the motion to suspend the rules on resolutions 146, 147, and 148.
For the introduction of...
For introduction, yes,
All
sir.
right. 140, what, say the number?
146, 147, 148.
And they are on everyone's desk.
Right, there
Okay,
are.
146,
Everyone has a
147.
copy.
Been moved by the Alderman from the 26th, seconded by the Alderman from the 24th. Madam Clerk, please, any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Is that an aye? Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Kotar. Alderman Conway. Alderman Gunther. Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Martin. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvie. Alderman Cone. Alderman Williamson. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderwoman Navarro. President Reed.
Aye.
Alderman Bosley. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderman Conway. Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Cone. "23 aye votes, 1 present.
By vote, staying the motion of the Alderman from 26, Madam Clerk, please place the aforementioned bills on the first reading resolutions calendar.
So noted.
First reading resolutions.
Resolution 146, approval by the Parks and Environmental Matters Committee of the Neighborhood Parks Capital Improvements Account annual budget pursuant to Ordinance 69372 regarding the proceeds of 3/16 cent tax.
Alderman from 26, you recognize on the first reading of Resolution 146.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to move Resolution 146, 147, 148 to the Parks and Environmental Committee.
All right, we're going to have to take those up individually. So you want to
Okay.
move 146 first to Parks and
Okay,
Environmental.
146 to the Parks and Environmental Committee.
All right, it's been moved by the Alderman from 26 that we assign Resolution 146 to the Parks and Environmental Committee, seconded by the Alderman from 24th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Madam Clerk, please assign Resolution 146 to Parks and Environmental.
So noted. Resolution 147, approval by the Parks and Environmental Matters Committee of the Neighborhood Parks Capital Improvement Account budget pursuant to Ordinance 64994 regarding the proceeds of the 1/10 cent tax.
Alderman from 26, you recognize on the first reading of Resolution 147.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to move Resolution 147 to the Parks and Environmental Committee.
Moved by the Alderman from 26, seconded by the Alderman from 24th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Madam Clerk, please sign Resolution 147 to Parks and Environmental.
So noted. Resolution 148, approval by the Parks and Environmental Matters Committees of the Neighborhood Park for a fund annual budget pursuant to Ordinance 67477.
Alderman from 26, you recognize on the first reading of Resolution 148.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to move Resolution 148 to the Parks and Environmental Committee.
Moved by the Alderman from 26, entertain a second, seconded by the Alderman from the 28th. Alderman from the 28th, I didn't know that was you. I have to get used to your voice. Alderman from the 28th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Madam Clerk, please assign Resolution 148 to Parks and Environmental.
So noted. That's the extent of first reading of resolutions.
Second,
We have none.
Alderman from the first.
Board, if I could take a moment, I'd like to introduce as my special guest, Representative Bruce Franks.
Welcome, Bruce.
Thank you.
We'll dispense with line item 22, miscellaneous unfinished business.
We have none.
Announcements.
Monday, October the 2nd, Personnel Committee meeting at 11 o'clock in the Leisure Room. Tuesday, Neighborhood Development Committee meeting at 9 a.m. Also on Tuesday, a Streets Committee meeting at 9 a.m. in the Leisure Room. Public Safety Committee meeting at 11 a.m. in the Kennedy Room. On Wednesday, Housing meeting at 9 o'clock in the Kennedy Room. And then on Thursday, Ways and Means Committee meeting at 9 a.m. in the Leisure Room. Friday, full board meeting, 10 a.m. in the chambers. That's the extent of my announcements.
We also have with us today our license collector, Mavis Thompson. Let's give her a round of applause. Thank you. Any further announcements? Alderman from the 25th.
Mr. President, I just wanted to make sure that with the Neighborhood Development Committee being announced for a meeting next Tuesday, we are going to be taking up some bills for tax abatement, obviously, but we'll also be discussing tax incentive reform in that meeting as well. So if you could please add that to the agenda for the meeting, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Alderman from the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. I'd like to recognize that on tomorrow, the Federation of Block Units will have their 85th annual assembly, and they're representing saving our communities and rebuilding our blocks. For those who don't know, the Federation of Block Unit has been a strong entity under the Urban League in this metropolitan area, and block units were the core of having community involvement, having people caring about their neighbors, watching out for their kids, keeping their blocks clean, all those kinds of things. So we need to get back to that. Everything cannot be solved on social media. It has to be solved in person sometimes, with feet on the ground and hands on the ground as well. So I would love to see a number of new block units formed, show up tomorrow morning for sure, and participate in this initiative at Harris Community College, or rather State University. Thank you.
All right,
8:30.
thank you. Alderman from the 7th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. This weekend in downtown St. Louis is the annual Q in the Lou Barbecue Festival. Hope you can all make it downtown. Festival starts tonight at 4 p.m., goes to 8, and then 11 to 8 Saturday and Sunday at Keener Plaza. We've got pit masters from all over the country and town cooking up some wonderful barbecue. Hope you can make it.
Alderman from the 6th.
Fox Park will host its annual fall festival from 11 to 2 this Saturday. There's a bunch of family-friendly free activities, so we'd love to see you there. Thanks.
All right. Any further announcements? Alderman from the 21st.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is not really an announcement, but this is a thank you to you for your leadership in getting body cameras to pass the Board of E&A. That's necessary for police accountability and transparency, and you were the first one to do it. So I just want to say thank you to you for getting that done.
All right, I appreciate the thank you, but more thank you goes to you and everybody else you organized and brought to the meeting, and that's what made it happen. So I appreciate and thank you and everybody that came to the meeting and make it happen. Let's give them all a big round of applause and thank you for doing it. Alderman from the 19th.
Mr. President, members of the board, I'd like to ask to go back to our recognition portion, if you don't mind giving me the privilege.
Yes, please proceed, Alderman.
Thank you very much. So as we stand here today in this chambers, we have a lot of people who have given a lot of time, energy, hours, moments, sweat, emotions, and passions to a process that they believe in. And we have to support their beliefs, because I have certain passions, and I hope don't nobody get in my way when I'm trying to do my thing, because you're going to be in trouble.
We won't.
But here we are today with a number of things before us in our community. And if we don't do anything else, we must respect each other, we must honor each other's actions, and we must be loyal to the process of the Constitution of America. So I would like to ask you to allow me to give recognition to all those who have been protesting for the last 2 weeks or more, and even with the Michael Brown, I'd like for you to have a hands up. Be recognized today in this chambers, please. Thank you. My pastor, stand up. All of you stand up. Stand up. Thank you.
Alderman from the 20th.
Mr. President, members of the board, this Saturday, tomorrow, we have the Common Sound Festival at Marquette Park. It's a free, family-friendly, music-oriented opportunity to come out and enjoy one of our city's finest public parks here in the city at Marquette, 1 to 7.
Thank you. Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Alderman from the 18th, you recognize on the motion to excuse.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move that the Alderman from the 5th and the 3rd be excused for necessary absence.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 18th. I entertain a second on motion, seconded by the Alderman from the 10th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carried. Too late. Motion carried. Alderman from the 18th, you recognize on the motion to adjourn.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move that the board adjourns until Friday, October 6th, 10 a.m.
Moved by the Alderman from the 18th, seconded by the Alderman from the 10th. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Stand adjourned.